Hi there, guys. It's CS MGTOW. I'm here with my good friend Logic Over Emotions, also known as Bobby Sonora. Yeah, it's pleasure to finally have you on the channel, Bobby. How are you doing?
Well, I want to thank you, CS MGTOW. I want to say out to my people, Logic Over Emotions, Male Angst, Why I Cry, MGTOW Till I Die. Giving a shout out to the entire MGTOW verse, especially CS MGTOW. CS, I want to just extend my gratitude to you for having me on your show.
Oh,
Uh,
it's my pleasure. It's really my pleasure.
yeah, when I first heard, because I used to listen a lot to Sargon, And when I heard your voice, I was like, wait, this sounds like Sargon just smoked like a couple of blunts. And he's like, he's like, you sound like a more laid back version, or how should I say? Inversely, Sargon is a coked up CS.
Well, the thing is that I can't say too much about it, but somebody's organizing an event of content producers in the UK, and I actually understand that Sargon will be there. So I've been invited as well, and I'm not sure if I'll attend, but then if I do attend, I'll meet him for the first time. But yeah, I like some of his stuff. I mean, I didn't enjoy his latest video where he made a response to Stardust, but without actually watching Stardust's video. But hey, each their own kind of thing. Yeah, so it's really, really great to have you here today. I read your book, and but just before kind of going into that, would you just like to give people some background? How did you become a man going your own way? If that's okay, if you'd like to share some personal things, but I can understand if some of them you don't want to share on air.
Oh, I love to share some personal things because, as they say, all things eventually come to the light. And so if I expect to go anywhere or do anything, it's going to be a point where these things are going to have to come to light because people relate to personal stories. And so I like to share mine as well. I didn't know anything about MGTOW at all. I was going through a lot of changes in my life. I would like to say starting from 2006. So this is almost 10 years ago. And I had been in a relationship I had been in a relationship for about 4 years. And then it was kind of like a marriage.
Okay.
And then when I got out of that relationship, I got into another relationship. And it was like a rebound relationship. But when I got out of the first relationship, I had built my whole identity around my employment, like what I was currently doing. I was working as an economist, and I was, in this long-term relationship, live-in relationship. And when things went sour, because I had this expectation in my mind about what it was to be a man in society, what it was to live up to, the role of a provider, a man who goes out to work and brings home the bacon. That's how we say it here. And when reality hit, and I realized that my ex and I were going in two different directions. And then this translated into a lot of things that I never really thought about when I'd taken up my career. For example, in my particular career, there's a certain type of individual. There are certain things I liked about the career as being an economist, but there are some things that just didn't vibe with me, and most of them didn't vibe with me. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is I put my ladder up against the wrong wall, and I climbed up the ladder, and I realized, oh, this is the wrong wall. So all of these things, and my best friend dying. So all of these things happen at one time. So it was a big paradigm shift for me. And it was like a glass. It's just like you take a mirror or something and you shatter it. And even if you put the pieces back together, it's not the same mirror. So after that point in life, I was trying to figure myself out. In the meantime, I had distracted myself with a rebound relationship. Fast forward 5 years after that, I come out of that relationship because I realized that it wasn't for me. I was on a rebound and I had started to grow. And when I started to grow, I realized that the relationship I did get into was a relationship that was just for the purposes of separation anxiety.
Mm.
And after I got, and there was the sleepless nights, man. I went through, I don't know how many. I tried to take that. What's that medicine? Ambien. Oh man.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
used that in the past to help tackle insomnia. It's
oh,
actually good stuff, but addictive.
oh yeah, man. That stuff scared the hell out of me because I'd have these weird ass dreams on it, and I just be like a walking zombie, like during the day. And I just said, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. So I was single. I found myself out on the market again, and then the women I started to meet were just, they had these unrealistic expectations. And that's when, and I'm just fast forwarding all this because that's when I was like, okay, I keep running into, these women, for example, and one of the things I wrote about in the book is inspired by this experience. I met this one woman. She was like kind of overweight, and she had two sons by two different babies' daddies.
And
And
she wanted you to be the third. You know.
and I was like, well, I don't have any children,
Okay.
and I was just very careful. But when I got with her, the first thing that threw me off was that, okay, I'm thinking, okay, you're kind of chubby. I mean, she wasn't super plump. She wasn't like a mega hyper ultra plumper. You know what I mean? She was just kind of like, she was kind of chubby, and she didn't have a fupa.
Okay.
You know what a fupa is?
Oh yes. So she was rotund. She was.
Yeah, she was rotund. She was portly. But but I'd always been into working out and things like that. So one of the things that she said that threw me off was, she said, "Oh yeah, we're dancing one time. She's like, oh yeah, I like my men with muscles." And I said, okay. I'm thinking to myself, but you don't work out. You know what I mean? And so I'm like thinking, okay, so you like your men with muscles, but you don't work out. And then that's when I realized that is a form of hypergamy. And I looked at women that went to the gym, and I saw like there would be a guy and a girl in the gym running next to each other on a treadmill, both runners, both pretty much good in their jobs. And the guy would be like, hey, you know what? To me, you are heterogeneous. You're just like me. You like to run, you like to do this. We have pretty much a career. We're in the same area. You and I should get together. But the woman would be like, oh, you're a great guy. You've got everything. You're just like me. Da 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 da. But there's something missing. And then she would look to the guy one level above that guy. So if she's working out in the gym, you better believe, if she's working out in the gym and her got herself together, you better believe her boyfriend or the guy that she wants to bone is going to be like, some sort of CrossFit or MMA or some other guy. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Plus, yeah. So that's when I started to realize. So I started to bring these things. And I'd always been an introspective person. I started to bring these theories together, and I started to write them down on paper. And I made a rough sketch of how I assumed men and women related to each other based on what I call life levels. And life levels, it's just another term for a person's sexual market value. So I just drew these diagrams. I haven't put them out yet, but maybe I'll make a video about it later.
That would be great. I'd love to see.
Yeah, because I'm working on this. I'm working on using financial theory, economic theory to prove hypergamy in my next upcoming video. But I'm working on some more technical videos. But so anyways, I wrote this book based on these theories, based on some experiences. And then I was thinking, okay, now who's going to listen to me? Because every time I turn on the TV, I see some idiotic talk show with women all about cackling and making fun of guys. And And the popular one here in this country is The View. Have you heard of it?
Unfortunately, I don't know. Is it I guess one of like a Jerry Springer type daytime, or is it a little bit more kind of somber than Jerry?
Well, Jerry was a hype. Jerry, right? Jerry was now Jerry and Maury. See, talk show went through an evolution then, because what Jerry Springer would do is he would get, and I equate these two. I don't care about your race. Ratchet and Trailer Park are the same thing to me. He would get the people on the bottom end of the spectrum in the United States, and put all their problems on TV, and they just want this attention, you know. So this girl comes on there and she's like, I want to find out who the daddy of my baby. You know what I'm saying? So then, like, you know what I'm saying? Now, Jerry and I think Maury went more on that line when he was like, he brought all these guys out and everybody she thought she fucked. And then, can I cuss on here?
Oh yeah, go for it, man.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll try to minimize it. And then she'd go down the line, and I remember there's this one episode where he went down about 4 or 5 guys, and none of them were the daddy of her baby. And you know,
Jerry Springer. I also think, I mean, the fact that the audience were just kind of screaming at these people,
yeah,
and they had like these huge bouncers just kind of standing around. It lends itself to a fight. Also, they would like it was actually really, really intelligent the way they put it together, because they would have one person sit there and it's very, very likely the person makes up lies. So the other person's listening backstage. So by that point, they've already heard all this stuff about them. They're pretty furious, right? They're like, no, that's a fucking lie. So they storm out, so they kind of just storm onto the set. And then by that time, they're pretty much just up for a fist fight. And
yeah. Oh yeah, for ratings. So we sell our soul to the devil. We have The View. So we have The View. Now this View is like a panel of women. They change people ever so often. The latest craze is this Raven Simone chick who grew up on the Cosby Show and has this, she has the new age, the independent woman kit. She's got the dyed hair and the tattoos and the mohawk cut. You know what I mean? And they sit around on a table. One of them is Whoopi Goldberg. Do you know Whoopi Goldberg?
I do. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. No. I know Whoopi Goldberg.
Hope you don't know her like that, CS. She does look like you better watch out.
Sure.
And so they sit around and they talk about different topics. And so I was thinking, okay, I wrote this book for guys, and then I realized, holy shit, guys don't really read a lot, So I had to get my stuff out there somehow. So I was like, okay, I wonder if there's anybody out there that feels the way I feel. So I was doing some market research, and then I went on YouTube, and then I typed male angst in. I typed in women's expectations or some other things, and then I started seeing MGTOW. And I was like, okay, what's this? And the one where I was getting the most hits, the first thing that popped up was like Sandman.
Okay.
And so then I started listening to Sandman, and I was like, holy shit, this guy has everything that I've been feeling inside. This guy has he has it almost like he's reading it from some kind of a charter, or what is that you guys have in the UK? Is it a parliament? You don't have a constitution. What do you have? What do you call it?
No, we have a parliament over here. I guess while we don't have a technical written constitution in the same way you do, I guess we have the Magna Carta over here.
The Magna Carta, yeah, it's like a Magna Carta of sorts. And I was like, damn. And I started looking through all these things, and I started looking at different MGTOW. But Sandman was the one who got me first, because his videos were really simple. They were really easy to follow, and the pictures were really entertaining. And he had this kind of like this monotone voice, And but it was kind of like, it was like he was talking about these doom and gloom subjects about men and women going down, and I understood all this completely, but I didn't even know how in the hell he could come out and be like, Hi everyone, Sandman here. I'm like,
You've got his voice down to a T. That's great.
Today's video is sponsored by blah blah blah. I was like, okay. So I started looking at different MGTOW. Then I heard Barbar. Was it Barbarossa?
Yes.
And his voice reminded me of this voiceover cartoon character. Oh, Pinky and the Brain.
Okay.
Remember, do you know the Brain from Pinky and the Brain?
Unfortunately, not, no.
Okay, look it up. When you hear the Brain talk, that's Barbarossa. Look it up on YouTube, Pinky and the Brain.
Okay.
And I was very entertained and also enlightened by how he brought evolutionary, is it psychology?
Yes.
Into it. He brought evolutionary, and that appealed to me as well. So I started going through the different channels. I started listening to the different content, and I said, okay, I can get with this. And then when I found out about what it meant to be a MGTOW, or a man going his own way, then I said, this is something that I can get behind. And after that, I haven't looked back since. And that was back in 2000. And when I was practicing the philosophy in 2000, and let's see, maybe 2009.
Okay.
2009, yeah. But I actually was conscious of it in like 2010 or 11, and then I haven't looked back since.
For sure. I mean, earlier on you mentioned, because of course, you're an economist in your background training, about using economic theory to prove hypergamy. I find that a really, really fascinating area. I know you're scripting a video about it, and obviously you don't want to let too much out, but can you just give us a little bit of information there about, possibly the type of theories, obviously without ruining the video that you're going to put out about this?
Well, actually, I think it would be good for me to talk a little bit about how I'm going to use economic theory, because it's going to be a two-part video series. The first part is going to use a very simple theory of present value in economics, which is pretty much what determines all asset prices, down to home mortgages, the value of the money in your bank account, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm going to break down. The first video is going to talk about why females are more risk averse when it comes to investment decisions. And then the second video is going to talk about how that risk averseness is proof of hypergamy in the next video.
Great.
So I would say that for all you guys out there, if you do know me or my channel, just go look up present value theory. But the basic idea is that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, because $1 today can gain interest.
For sure. In fact, that is the basis of interest rates. The reason we have interest is because we prefer $1 today versus $1 tomorrow, and that preference, or the cost associated with that preference is then an interest rate. So yeah, that's a tremendously important area. And I guess one of the things, and I only have anecdotal evidence for this, or maybe my own personal experiences, is that women do tend to have a very, very different, I guess a different discounting rate over future value. I guess, just to kind of simplify that, most women that I've come across will spend in the moment. So, they won't save. They very, very rarely, without the input of a husband or a father of some sort, invest. It's about consumption today, and men on average will be the ones who will save for the future, because they don't discount the future as heavily. It's a very, the genders have a very, very different approach to spending and wealth retention and wealth expenditure.
You know something? You just enlightened me, because I was actually going to use the time value component to describe hypergamy. But now that I just think about what you're talking about, essentially women spending everything today means that they have a very low discount rate. I mean, if you're talking in terms of the discount rate, then they have a low discount rate. And if men are are the opposite and they save more, then it's possible that the man's discount rate has built into it the surplus from the woman's discount rate. You know?
Precisely. And I also think it's down to the fact that males can't get away with not investing for the future. So
right.
So not only are we biologically driven to acquire resources and keep those resources and increase their value, but also the way society is set up, as a man, if you end up, broke at the age of 80, I mean, you're in very, very serious trouble there. Not only because of the social system, but I mean, hypothetically speaking, an 80-year-old woman still can find probably maybe a 90 or 100-year-old guy. There's but
or maybe even in the other way, in the other direction, she might find a 50-year-old guy.
Yeah, I mean, if she looks after herself, sure. I've seen some crazy things these days. There was a guy on the news the other day. It was just a kid, actually, probably about 27, and he was quote unquote dating. The lady was his girlfriend, and she was about 53 or something. And I just thought, what is the world coming to? I mean, somebody needs to sit this kid down. But hey, that's.
Think about it. I mean, he doesn't have to worry about her getting pregnant, so he can just bust free.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he's in a shooting range with unlimited ammo. Each time you bust a shot, you have to worry about what the repercussions are. And that woman, it's just like a drop in the bucket.
Sure. Well, actually, just on that topic, I mean, one of the things that I've really, really personally struggled with over the years, whenever I've, had partners, even in my blue pill days, before I ended up, I have a young daughter, but even in my blue pill days, the one thing that, just frightened me to hell was impregnating a woman. And actually, even now that I've gone my own way, that's a huge risk for me in terms of getting, just getting a girlfriend or just kind of a regular fuck buddy, just simply because even with condoms or whatever, there's still a risk of pregnancy, however small. And once she gets pregnant, she owns you. I mean, going your own way or not, you're owned. Once she gets pregnant.
And also there's that one little thing, CS. There's that it's like once you go raw, you don't want to go back,
Exactly. Well, especially if you
it's like what nature intended,
Exactly. No, you're completely. I mean, there was a content producer who put it just so well. He said, "Look, sex without a condom is suicide, but sex with a condom is pointless."
Yeah, it's like exercise,
Yeah.
I just did a good workout here. But with the guy that was dating the 56-year-old chick, all he has to do is get a little bit of olive oil and some KY jelly and just spit like. Are you wet? Okay, that's okay. We'll just some 3WD-40 or something. And just
that was hilarious. Cool. And in terms of, I mean, I read your book, a really, really enjoyable book, and I know we have quite a lot of other things to discuss, but I'll just love to kind of explore your ideas. What's the goal of your book? And because you talked about male angst, one of the things that came to my mind was red pill rage. How does male angst fit with red pill rage for you?
Male angst is red pill rage.
Okay.
I didn't know that. Well, like I said before, when I didn't know what MGTOW was, I said, you know what? I'm going to create male angst, and I'm going to create, like, I have a genre called male angst, and I said, I'm going to go online. I was like, you know what? I can't find anything about male angst online. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go online and I'm going to start a movement. I'm going to start a movement, and guys are going to come on. And I was like, oh, there's MGTOW already. Okay, well, I just get in line. It's kind of like I'm gonna start my own gang, and then you walk around the corner and you see a bunch of guys already in a gang. I'm like, okay, it's either I join you or walk alone. So,
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And, what are the goals? Is it the kind of book that I should be getting to, a blue pill friend, or is it, what's the kind of motivation behind this?
Well, the motivation behind the book is actually taking red pill rage or male angst and putting it into a productive fashion, putting it into something, taking the lemons and making lemonade, taking the energy that comes from those encounters and putting it into something tangible that if someone wants to read it and share their experience, they could. The person that you'd give this book to is, I would say, it could be a man who is going to go his own way. A true blue pill man probably wouldn't read it because they got too much going on with their snuggle bumps that they won't. You know what I mean? That they won't. That they probably wouldn't sit down. And if they did read it, there was this guy I did know, a friend of my friends, whose wife was like male angst. Like this guy, he's a total blue pill guy, and
Okay.
he was an economist, and I said, yeah, I wrote a book, and he's like, what is this? Like, and then his wife is always around him, and then the wife's like, male angst, what's that? And I look at the guy, and the guy looks at his snuggle bumps, and I'm like, oh. I'm like, you know what? I maybe you shouldn't read this because you know what I mean. And so I think that this book would be good for, and one of my theories that I'm going to put out there, and I'm sure people know this, they've talked about it, the segmentation, and I've talked about this, the segmentation of the dating market. How we've moved from a mating strategy that was similar to wolves before, but because of how you mentioned, CS, the rampant hypergamy, now the dating market is highly segmented. So like you said, like most people say 80% of the women are dating 20% of the guys.
Yeah.
So this book would be best for a guy who is still like, he's bumping his head against the wall. He can't figure out why the women are so hypergamous, and he wants the women to, he believes that there's a woman out there that's different than all the rest, but he keeps running into the women that are like that. And so I think this book would be good for someone to help, like, kind of like usher them in from being blue pill into red pill, the same way Charon used to carry the dead across the Styx River. I think this book would take the blue pill man across the proverbial Styx River and bring him to the other side, into the land of Elysium. You know what I mean?
Nice. I see you enjoy your ancient Greek mythology. Very nice.
Oh, you know Greek mythology, huh? So then you know Zeus, who's the alpha.
Well, I think just on the topic of hypergamy, I think you've raised a really, really important issue, because the kind of traditionalists out there, that is likely the one area which they just don't focus enough of their attention on, because they sort of say, or even the kind of PUA community, they man up and go out there and approach women, and they call MGTOW cowards for refusing to do this. But what they don't understand is that when you have runaway hypergamy, the cost associated with obtaining sexual access goes up dramatically. So I remember, when I was dating, when I was much, much younger, or just trying to have sex with women, you didn't have to do a lot. I'm not suggesting it was easy, far from it, but nowadays the level of effort needed just for the average guy just to go out there and have sex, it's incredible. You change your clothes, you've got to dress up, you've got to be impeccably smart, you've got to be ripped, or you've got to be just the funniest guy in the room. And that's partly why I go my own way, not because it's so difficult that I can't do it, but it's just the level of effort. I simply don't want to put that much effort into something that doesn't give me a tangible return. So for example, if I'm putting that much effort into my company, my business, or my friendships, or even trading options, or something which I enjoy doing, I get something tangible out of all of these. But if I'm putting that much effort into chasing a woman, at least from my own personal point of view, and I don't suggest anybody should follow this, but I just can't see the personal benefit. And that's the issue with hypergamy, that these guys aren't realizing that when you have runaway hypergamy, the cost for the average guy to get a woman. It's like, for example, in China now,
Oh yeah,
where
leftover women.
if a guy basically, because of course you have hypergamy there. I mean, it's because they're all working, they all have their own income.
And the government, remember the government, CS.
Oh, exactly. You know, with the
One-child policy, they set it off.
yeah, absolutely, and that would drastically reduce the supply of women
Mm-hmm.
because you know the dowry system and the male children were supposed to support the families and the older parents. So now a guy in China would find it very, very difficult to find a partner for sexual release or even for marriage unless he really has pay for a house. He has maybe $500,000 in savings.
Or CS, check this out. And I don't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no,
But
please.
I want to tell you this before in terms of sexual economics, the traditionalists, and remember how you said the price of access to women has risen?
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is this, and I don't know, like I know you you're good, you trade options, which is pretty option. We have to talk about Nadex another time. But what a lot of Chinese men do, if they're available to, if they can do it, if they have that kind of clout to do it, is they go to places where the cost of getting access to women is lower, like Vietnam.
Absolutely.
Or the Philippines or something like that.
You're completely right. In fact, I used to live in the Philippines, and
ooh,
yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah.
But a lot of Chinese guys and Japanese guys would come over there. And now, of course, I recognize that they're partly driven over that because of the hypergamy in their own countries. It's just so high. If he wants to, father children, and he's already, he has to have bought a house and a car. The large majority of the population over there don't have that kind of money, so they would just simply show up in Manila and just have a great time over there.
Yeah. Have you heard of are you familiar with any economic theories, CS?
Sure. I mean, I've tended to do most of my studying on the Austrian side because I used to self-identify as a libertarian. So on the Austrian side, so Rothbard, von Mises, Hayek, Lysander Spooner. I'm slightly familiar with the kind of Keynesian school, but I don't know as much about it as the Austrian side of the economic equation.
Well, there's this theory. It's there's a city model. I think it's Solo's city model, where it talks about a perfectly competitive business, kind of like men are like almost like a perfectly competitive commodity when it comes to sex. Okay. Because we're highly competitive, and each man is pretty much the same on talked about average guys. But then when you talk about location, you see that in itself has a price. So I remember we talked a little bit about bringing this to economic theory. But if you think about it like this, if the price of access to women in a given area goes up, then what men will do is they will go to another area where the cost is lower.
For sure.
And then they'll raise the price there.
Mm.
So that's why you have these guys thinking, well, I'm just going to get me a wife from like Thailand and I'm going to bring her. But then once she gets to your country, her market value goes up.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
And you're stuck again. Yeah.
Well, actually, Stardust released a really, really great video. I think it was a couple of years ago, and it was, if I remember correctly, the title of the video was "Traditionalism's Last Hope," and he spoke about there was a particular guy who said, "Look, I still want to do the traditional thing, so I'm going to go to." I think he ended up in Thailand, or it was either Thailand or the Philippines, and the guy admitted that, "Look, I can't bring my partner, my wife, back to the West." I think she was a Thai lady. So he couldn't bring her back to the West because he knew for a fact that the only reason he had control over her was because of the poverty over there, because he held the purse strings. For all intents and purposes, if he brought her back to the West, he would be divorced. She would leave him in a heartbeat, probably for a guy from her own country that she met over there, that she met in the West. So And that's really traditionalism's, you know, last hope. You know, just the much poorer parts of the world, and you
I
know.
mean, like, yeah, you're right. You're right, sis. You're right. I mean, he's gonna be like, "Hey, I thought you said $2 for two."
Yeah, okay.
No,
Sure.
no more $2. Now $200.
Sure. No. Have you've been to the Philippines or?
No, but my ex was Filipino. But I'm gonna tell you one thing, CS. Do you know? Did you hear about women? Oh my God, CS. Is it true that women in the UK? I seen these little documentaries, and I think we should put. I think we should put these femmes on blast because they have these women in the UK that do sex tourism in Africa. Have you heard about that?
Oh yes, yes. I think it's really, really popular with women from the UK and Germany.
Yeah, they
I
go on
saw.
what you call holiday.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Holiday. Holy day.
But there was a really, really like just absolutely hilarious article in the Daily Mail about it. And I don't usually read the Daily Mail. A friend of mine sent it to me, and so some of these women were so delusional that they really thought these guys loved them. So you know
Yeah.
the guy would like propose or whatever, and then she would start sending him money, and then only later on she would find like he's just like got his own girlfriend locally, and she's actually a hottie and like 40 years younger, and they're like, oh my god, I can't believe he really didn't love me all along, and she's like basically just somebody's grandmother, and he's like 19 or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but yes, did you hear, dude? They flipped the script. Did you hear that even these old wrinkled fatties are like flipping the script and even being hypergamous in
Whoa.
countries that go hot? They go there and they're like, you know what, like the old Brit lady will be like, oh, what's your cock? And the guy will be like, I don't know, but I will give it to you, right? So then Umbatu becomes like 35 and he's like, well, and then she's like, Umbatu, you can't catch a crocodile anymore. You can't chase after the lion and the Masai anymore. Umbatu, you're no longer my Zulu warrior. I need a younger, fresher. I need a younger, fresher guy.
Oh,
So
man, I didn't realize going on over there. That's hilarious. Even at that age,
they're practicing hypergamy, like Buzz Lightyear, like a million and beyond.
Oh, that's so funny. It's really, really hilarious because in the West, of course, just the average 60-year-old woman, I mean, the hypergamy has been suppressed simply because of her sexual market value, that it's gone down. But sure, actually, it makes a lot of sense that if she goes to a part of the world where, for all intents and purposes, she's an alpha female, she brings foreign currency and just, I guess foreign currency. Yeah, she's an alpha female. She can pick and choose.
Oh yeah, and yeah, oh yeah, and I think also you see, and that's why we should get together. We should get a group of MGTOW together to intellectualize this because that's when it comes in. And I want to pay homage and much respect to the former YouTuber Truth Over Everything for the lamps theory. But I think that when you're talking about these really poor places, they're not always as much considered about youth and beauty as much as they're considered about resources.
Oh, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and then these women, they go raw with these dudes.
Whoa!
Like, have you heard it? They call it. You can look on YouTube. They call it going native. They call it going native. That's what the Brit ladies call it, going native. So here you are. She's going native down in some place like Zambia or Zimbabwe or Uganda or something like that. With all types of dudes, like, and it's just like, okay, it's like, and the guys are on the video crying, talking about they actually falling in love with these white ladies, which is not wrong with it, but I mean, it's like they're rare. He's like, hey, Ubatu, check me out. I got a snow bunny, And like, don't worry, my brother, for long she will not be yours. She has cheaper to keep her.
I actually very, very briefly I was sleeping with this girl, and yeah, she had an insane sexual past. I mean, it was so insane that I thought I'd done some like crazy shit. But one of the first, like, so the first night I met her, you know, I just immediately took the conversation into a kind of sexual level, and I told her some of the crazy things that I've done. And she kind of laughed and she said, haha, that's nothing. And I was like, what the fuck? And then she said, well, you know, when she, you know, first, you know, she was actually a pretty high-flying accountant when I met her, but when she first got to London, she didn't have very much money. And although she'd found a job, it was going to take her a while to get paid. So she answered one of those ads in a paper, and she showed up in this flat, and it was just like a 10 guy gangbang scene on her. And that was an accountant. You know, she worked for like KPMG or something. I mean, so she was a, you know, a pretty high flying accountant. And that's just the average girl out there. And I just was like, whoa, that's crazy. But the reason I finally
for Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Because she got glazed.
But the reason I finally said, look, like you know, I fucked her a couple of times. I didn't want to see her any longer, but was that you know, she kept on telling me that she had a fantasy, not even a fantasy. I mean, she was going to make it happen. I mean, she was already checking flight. She wanted to go on like you know, to Jamaica. I was just like, well, you know, obviously, I mean, whoever you fuck is your thing, but if you're going to go there to ride the cock carousel, well, you know, I don't want to pick up anything. So not that I'm suggesting guys over there have anything, but you know, it's just I was fucking her raw, you know, without even trying. So I'm guessing other guys would fuck her raw as well. Mm-hmm. But that was just the mentality. I mean, it was just ravenous. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I fucked her a couple of times, you know, let somebody else have at it.
Oh yeah, man. And you know what? The bottom line is that they might tend to have more something over there simply because that's just the statistics. In poor areas, you know, they go raw like crazy, you know. Oh, and so you're more likely gonna get something there. You know, they live for today. They don't. A lot of those places people live for today because they don't, like, you know, they don't really see a future.
Oh, for sure. When there's very, very little economic opportunity, you know, for sure, humans will respond, you know, to their environment. And one of the things I would also like to, you know, kind of speak with you about is because there's a huge issue of, you know, race in MGTOW, and you know, obviously I'm an African guy. You're an African American, so.
Are you African?
Oh yes, I'm Nigerian.
You're Nigerian, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Why did I think you were white for some reason? Well, I mean, not white. I mean, what's your biological? Are you biologically derived from Europe, or are you biologically African, like sub-Saharan?
No, I'm African, but both my parents are Nigerian.
Oh, really? Oh, that's what's up, man. I didn't know that. I didn't know this. My dad was from Liberia.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Like the poorest African nation. Like, I mean, Liberia is like, Nigeria is like one of the richest nations, man.
Nigeria has a lot of issues. I mean, the country has a lot of issues, but many of them perhaps even insurmountable. I mean, one can always hope that the country improves, but I'm skeptical. But hey, that's just my own beliefs, you know. And I do hope, of course, I'm proven wrong. But you know, there was a huge kind of, I wouldn't even say breakaway, but a lot of black guys, you know, joined, or not even joined. It's not a movement. I mean, they now identify as it more, and they felt that MGTOW didn't adequately represent the, you know, black guys, and you know, I have my own kind of opinions there as to whether MGTOW should represent any particular race. For me, it's about.
What's your opinions? Yes, would you like to voice it or no?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I personally don't believe MGTOW is here to represent any particular race, whether black, white, Asian. MGTOW is avoidance of gynocentrism, and you find gynocentrism to one degree or another in every single country, you know, period in history. So for me, MGTOW goes beyond race. And every once in a while on my channel, you know, I'll post a video and I'll get some guy who says something just batshit insane. He'll say, you know, and it's the Jewish people causing. Yeah. Like, look, I'm not into banning people. So as long as the guy isn't advocating open violence or suggesting, you know, he's going to get into something.
Or suggesting he's going to bring the second Holocaust or some shit like that.
Exactly. So I just kind of leave these guys be.
Right.
You know, but for me, it would have been a very, very dangerous thing for MGTOW to start taking on the issues of the Black community. And the reason I say that is that the issues of the Black community, in my opinion, are far too large for a community like MGTOW. I mean, you know, there are lots and lots of issues. I mean, there are issues that the Black community in England as well as the US, you know, with poverty, with violence, with, you know, the rates of incarcerations. And those issues, I don't believe can be dealt with adequately within MGTOW. I mean, these are really wider social issues. And then, quite honestly, what does MGTOW become? Does it become, you know, a platform for us to lament, let's say, the death of A. Trayvon Martin? And while his death was certainly, you know, very, very disappointing, I mean, whatever the kind of factors surrounding it, I'm sorry that the young boy died. You know, for sure, nobody deserves to go out like that. But for me, it's still not an issue that should be dealt with within MGTOW. I mean, not only is it a male-on-male, you know, issue. I mean, one guy attacked and fought and then murdered another guy. And for me, MGTOW is very, very much gynocentrism. So while the issues that the men in IPMOR, you know, while the issues they identified were certainly important, incredibly important. Do you need to answer that?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. You know, those things happen. Yeah, but no, it's fine. You continue.
So for sure. So while at least from my point of view, they were very, very important issues, and they deserve a platform. Absolutely, they deserve to be campaigned against. They deserve to be discussed in depth, so that we as a society find ways to reduce those kind of events. But that platform, in my opinion, is not MGTOW.
Well, CS, first of all, before I begin, I want to apologize. I didn't check my privilege.
What do you mean?
I didn't. Well, I assumed. I assumed like I was talking to you. I assumed that you were like you know, a white guy, and I didn't know.
It doesn't matter at all. I mean,
I'm being dramatic. I identify similarly to you when it comes to politics. I identify similarly as like a libertarian. In an essence. That's what my when I took this little political test, that's what came up. But putting that aside, and when you talk about race and you talk about MGTOW, everyone out there knows logic over emotions view.
For sure.
And that is the same as are you familiar with Black Gnostic Speaks?
Oh yes, I'm subscribed to his channel.
Did you hear the one speech he gave about race and MGTOW? Did you hear that one video?
I would have, but I didn't remember its content.
Okay. Okay, he said the same thing, generally what you said, but he said it he has this way of delivering a message. He's almost like a metaphysical reverend in a sense.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So he said basically, just like you said, that the issue of MGTOW has to do with men and the issue of gynocentrism. And he said, when you come to MGTOW, it's like going to, and he likened it to going to an Alcoholic Anonymous group. He said, the problem that we have if we're alcoholics is that we're trying to get rid of alcoholism. So he said basically, I don't care if you're from the Ku Klux Klan. If you leave your hood at the door, when we go into this meeting in Alcoholics Anonymous, we're brothers. Because that's the issue. The issue that we're facing is alcoholism. And, you know, and it's and like you said, I think the issue of race when this IPMOR thing. Let's talk a little bit about the IPMOR thing, because there's this one guy that was coming in stirring up shit named Migbro, and he changed his name to some kind of Israelite like Jehu.
That guy's insane.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, okay, so let's talk a little bit about, first, to understand the race issue, we got to understand, I think more importantly, the socio-cultural aspects of it. African Americans have there's one mainstream narrative that's being played about African Americans, and it's almost similar to, like, I guess you would, there's a mainstream narrative of pro-blackness that's being played, and it's almost, and it has its different sects and different branches. But there's two main divisions of African Americans, and I'm speaking about what's going on in America. There's the black guys that follow more of the WEB, Du Bois theory, and there's the black guys that follow more of the Booker T. Washington theory. Are you familiar with those?
I'm familiar with the work of Booker T. Washington, but not the theory. Can you explain?
Okay, so WEB was more like, we need social equality. It's basically, we need social equality, and Booker T is, we need economic equality, or we need economic equality first before integration. And then WB was like, we need to be equal first, and then we need to get in positions of political power first, and then we need to integrate. I mean, and then we need to be economically powerful. But Booker T was like, look, you know, he acknowledged there is racism, but we need to be skilled, like tradesmen and things like that, so that people will bring value, and then through the virtue of trading, integration will come. You follow what I'm saying? I think I said this in one of my videos.
For sure.
You get what I'm saying? See, yes or no?
Oh yes, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. I understand both theories.
In the United States, we have these certain demographics and stereotypes. I'm just going to play one for your example. Like, let's say there is a white guy in the backwoods of Mississippi, and he doesn't like black people, right? Okay. But he likes cocaine.
Okay.
And he doesn't know where to get it, and he knows this dude named Daytrell Wilkins. And I don't mean to signal out anybody out there. It's just, but let's say Daytrell has the best fish scale cocaine on the side of the Mississippi River.
Okay.
And he runs into this guy, and the guy's like, well, shit, I don't like black guys, but damn, Daytrell's got some good coke. And so they trade. He purchases the coke from Daytrell. Daytrell shows up, gives him the coke. It's consistent. Through these multiple interactions, even though he says he doesn't like black people, they have a purpose for interacting.
For sure.
They will become more accustomed to seeing black people through trade. Okay. Through value, through, you know, exchange of value. For versus sure. Right, versus if we force that guy to go to school with somebody because we need to integrate, and we force them to integrate together. It's like, well, shit, I don't want to be here, but or the person is or let's say, or like in the new example is the gay thing, like the gay and lesbian thing. Well, I don't want to make a cake for these people because I don't believe in gay people getting married, but they want to force the businesses to bake the cakes for them. So I'm like thinking, if I'm gay, why would I even want to spend my money with you if you don't like my lifestyle? You get what I'm saying?
For sure, for sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And what I would say is this, and like yourself, I mean, I'm assuming your position, just based on what you said, is that forced integration is not a good thing. So, yeah, and I agree with that. But because ultimately, one of the things to always keep in mind is that in-group gender preference, which essentially that's what racism is at its most basic level. You know, sorry, not an in-group gender preference, but an in-group preference. Mm-hmm. Was a survival advantage. You know, at one point in our species history, being around people who looked like you was the smartest thing you could do to stay alive. And although now we have modernity and we have air travel and we can get across the world in maybe a day or two, we're still driven by very, very deep, you know, kind of biological you know, drivers, which were there for a very, very good reason. So every human being on Earth is, okay, let's use the term racist, to some degree or another. You know, we have an in-group, you know, preference. On average, people tend to marry within their own races. And I don't think this is good or bad. It's just a fact of the human condition. And for sure, I do agree with, at least based on what you've said of Booker T. Washington's kind of position there, that the most important thing is to have education, and then social equality can follow. Because if you're interacting with somebody voluntarily and you're trading with them, then there may be a basis for further interaction or even possible, friendship or whatever later on, at least on an individual level. I'm very, very keen to avoid, forced integration. I don't think it's a very, very good thing, which is why one of the things I've said, in my discussion with Stardust, the Thinking Ape, is that, look,
episode, he turns to Mero, he's like, and Mero kept calling T-Dog a nigger, and he was like, there are no more niggers, Mero. There's only light meat and dark meat. Us and them. Meaning dark meat, meaning the zombies,
For sure, for sure.
And he set Mero straight, he's like, listen, Mero, and this is something I brought up in one of my videos when I talked about gangs as being an in-group preference, and I said, listen, there's all these gangs in the street, but when they go to prison, they unite under a similar phenotypic race.
For sure.
So it's that idea, being like-minded and associated with like-minded people. Shouts out to Heartburn, who talked about I like the
Heartburn's channel, actually. I subscribe to his content.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to head out in about 5 minutes. I've promised a couple of friends that I'll meet them for dinner, and so I just have to go and shower up and stuff. But I guess on the final thing, and we should continue this discussion. I think there's just so much to discuss. But just on the final thing for the discussion today, I'd love to kind of talk with you about the future of MGTOW. Where do you see it going? Do you think it's going to be mainstream at one point? I mean, will we see guys walking down the street with, the kind of going your own way symbol at one point?
I see it as inevitable, but the problem is men aren't the majority of consumers. If it's going to really happen, there's going to have to be we're going to have some Karen Strawns come out there, we're going to, of course, I'm thinking actually about, I actually had an idea for doing some t-shirts and things like that. I think that it's going to hit. I think it's going to hit. It's just a matter of when. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it's just going to be a matter of when. And I think definitely you should invest stock in MGTOW because it's going to grow. There's no doubt about it.
For sure. And just kind of wrapping things up, can you tell everybody, the title of your book and where they can get it? I'm of course going to be posting a link in the description bar, but can you also just let people know, how they can get it and, what's the title?
Sure. So the name of the book is called Male Angst. FML. I always get those chicks, and those is in quotations. So, right. So it's I always get those chicks. So it talks about the protagonist who, it talks about two major relationships that the protagonist goes through. The first relationship he goes through is a Vietnamese woman with 2 kids, a psychotic baby's daddy that from the army, from the military, and then the second relationship, and so the book is in 2 parts. The first relationship, and then there's a few chapters in that relationship. Then the second relationship is an overweight Hispanic baby mama with 2 babies' daddies, and then it talks about a few chapters in those relationships. Then it talks about other things like his dead end job at the time, his work, his interactions there at work with people there, and then the little thugs and little party guys that he runs into and low lives that make his life complete. And in closing, I also want to just thank you, CS, for having me on again, because I like interacting and pushing this message out to as many guys as we can before it's too late.
For sure, absolutely. And is your book available on Amazon.com or?
Oh yeah, I didn't mention. Yes, please go on Amazon. My author name is Bobby Cenoura. Cenoura means carrot in Portuguese. I got that name from if you've ever seen The City of God, I recommend you see the movie. But I got
It's
the
a
name from you
it's a
saw that?
spectacular.
Yeah. I got the name from Carrot, one of the characters. His name is Sonora, and so it's Bobby, Bobby, Sonora, C like Enoura, and that's the author name. Enter that on Amazon. Male Angst. You enter that in
Great.
Amazon, and then you can go in and get the book. I think it's pretty cheap. I think it's like $4.99.
Perfect. And
So
I'll
if
be
you like to
posting a
dive
link.
in.
Perfect. So I'll be posting a link. Bobby, it's it's been a real pleasure, and I'm looking forward to our next discussion.
And I am too. So yes, enjoy your dinner. It's not even lunchtime for us.
I've arranged to meet some friends at a Vietnamese place, so I like the place as well. It's a pretty nice place. So looking forward to it.
All right. Well, make sure you only just dive in the bowl of noodles. Don't get yourself in trouble.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day ahead, and yeah, speak with you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.